Today's guest is Miss May Xiong. May has a very interesting story, a story of challenges, trials and tribulation, overcoming things, adventure, uh, success, and achievement. And we're going to hear her story. May is a young lady who came over as an immigrant from Laos, and she's part of the Hmong community here. And I have to say this plug. My wife and I have been blessed to have been to Hmong events, and we just love it. And the hospitality is so great. The food never stopped coming. The drinks never stopped coming, even though I'm not much of a drinker. What I tell people, if you do drink, every Hmong event I've been to have the most quality alcohol that you could find. And I don't want to spend too much time on that, except to say it was at a Hmong event that I had my first taste of Johnny Walker Blue Label. And I don't know, you can go out and take a look at that, but it was very good. And like I said, it's the only time in my life I had that. So let's just give you some idea. They treated us, always treat us like kings and queens. And by the way, the only final thing before I bring May on is I just love the culture. And all the people I've ever met has been the nicest people, and just the whole culture. So without further ado, here's my guest, May Xiong. May, welcome to the Lacy Johnson podcast. How you doing today?
Good. Well, thank you so much for having me on your show. And I want to apologize to your listeners about my raspy voice. I've been battling a cold for the last few weeks and kind of lost my voice in the last few days. I'm just trying to recover that. And so if I sound a little raspy and I have to drink some hot water and tea, just excuse me and apologize for that.
Okay, that's no problem. So May, as I told my audience, you are an immigrant here from the country of Laos. I know, just as a background, a general brief background, this happened during the Vietnam War. And people who are interested, you can go out and do some research on the history of the Vietnam War. Vietnam had to fight off a few what's imperialist forces. I think China was one, France was one, and I think after France, then the United States came in, and because this was the whole era of the Cold War, it became a battleground between communism and capitalism. The thing that struck me personally is that there was one gentleman from our high school in a small town in Mississippi, Sadie B. Thompson High. I say Sadie B. Thompson High because I'm just so proud of the school, who was killed in the Vietnam War. My late older brother, he fought there, had some issues with Agent Orange. And when you watch people come home and you watch them up close, you realize that war takes its toll on people. And you realize, and I can only imagine, I tell people, I've only seen one dead body that wasn't in a coffin, and that was a life-changing experience. I can understand if you're in the foxhole with someone and your fellow soldiers and the type of things that happen there, and that it can have a long-term effect. Is easily understand that. But that's enough of that. Okay, so May, why don't you tell our audience your story? First, let's just start off with your family situation briefly. And then I understand you had a very adventurous, uh, arduous, I think that's the word, trip to America. Why don't you start there and let our audience know what a strong lady you were, and your family background and things like that.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, my journey would probably, I wouldn't be the strong person, but I would give the credit to my mom. You see, in 1979, my parents, along with many relatives, about 30 plus relatives, they decided to make a dangerous move, fleeing from Laos to Thailand. And prior to that, they had to go from village to village because their village kept getting bombed from the Vietnamese soldiers. So after 2 years of fleeing from village to village, they decided, why not just take the risk? Take the risk and try to get to Thailand. And that's what they did in 1979. My mom had three small children, and she was also pregnant with me. And this journey was not, a journey that would be easy. It was very dangerous. It was during the monsoon season. They have to sleep during the day and try to walk through the jungle at night. It took them about 6 to 7 months to reach the Mekong River, which divides uh, Laos and Thailand. And before they get to the river, my dad and my mom got separated because he went out with a few men to scout a safer route for them to get to the river. And when they did that, they couldn't find the group. So they got separated and left my mom with the few small children, along with the relatives that they came with. Now, by this time, many of the people that came with them died. So out of the 30 plus people, my mom said there were only about 12 to 15 people left. I mean, there was starvation, there was illnesses, and there were many things that happened along the way. So my mom eventually crossed the river um, with her two children and a cousin who couldn't swim. And my mom was not an avid swimmer herself. She just learned a few strokes and learned how to swim a little bit, but not much. She
Mhm.
has an inner tube, and she tied my cousin and the children, and she um, swam across the river. And during that time, it was a very strong current. It was, like I said, it was during the monsoon season, and she wanted to survive. She wanted to protect her kids and want her children to survive, and she did what she can. And eventually, she made it to the other side um, and went to the camp, the refugee camp in Thailand, where she reunited with my dad because my dad also made it over to the refugee camp.
So, and we're going to pick up the camp and how you got to America, but you said a couple of interesting things there. First of all, just to remind the audience that my guest is Mei Zhang. She's running for Congress in the fourth congressional district. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I know there's a convention coming up, endorsement, and we'll get into that. But a couple of quick questions. Well, first of all, you indicated that your dad and some other members of the migrants that was working their way through the jungle went off to find a different route. Just out of curiosity, what was the plan for you guys to reconnect and how and to communicate once they found that route? How would they have known where to find you at? What was the plan to reconnect with the group once they found this route?
So, what my understanding was that there was a wooded area, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess they all planned and pointed in that direction, and
Mm-hmm.
that is the area where you will hide, and we are
Okay.
going to go ahead and scout a safe trail to the river.
The other question is, did your dad was well? Let's put it this way: did you lose any members of your family as part of this trip to migrate across the Mekong River?
Well, when my mom made it to the refugee camp, I have a sister that was really sick, and throughout the dangerous journey, she did
Mm-hmm.
try to make sure that she has enough food and water, and of course they didn't have any medicine, and so she did the best that she can for my sister. Eventually, when they made it to the refugee camp. 2 months after that, she passed away. She actually passed away 10 days before I was born. So just imagine grieving a child and then giving birth to another child at, within 10 days. I just cannot imagine the what she's going through at that moment in
Okay.
time. Mhm.
And I let the audience know, piggyback on what I said about being invited to uh, partake with the Hmong culture. I do know that there was a late General Powell. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Correct me if I'm
Bang Pow. Hmm.
uh, was he part of this group or had he migrated? Well, I'm assuming he was way up in the. And by the way, this was considered for our audience to know. This was considered a secret war. Was it General Powell taken care of by the CIA or whatever, and already over here, and you came later? Where was he at during all this time? Because I know he's very well respected, and he was the leader of the military units up there. So where was General Powell at this time?
So in 1975, I think that's the first wave of Hmong immigrants, and I I'm not exactly sure because
Uh-huh.
there are many dates where they said, well, the war ended in 1975. Some said earlier, so I don't know exactly. I mean, it's still a mystery because if you ask people from Vietnam or from Cambodia or from somewhere else around that region, they have a different answer. I
Right.
actually just learned that going to an event with the Vietnam veterans, and so in 1975, General Vang Pao and many of the Hmong leaders, they fled the country already. And
Mm-hmm.
so leaving many civilians behind, my dad, he still have his father there and some of his family members. And they weren't sure if they want to flee the country or stay behind and just trying to endure it and hopefully it will pass. But eventually, like I said, you know 2 years of running from village to village was enough for them, and they decided
Mm-hmm.
to just take a risk and take the risk, the dangerous journey to Thailand.
Okay, and we're going to talk about your trip from the uh, refugee camp, to America. But what state is Laos in today, and the Hmong community? Do you well? Let's go to this route. Do you ever have you ever visited? Went back to Laos to visit your previous homeland?
I have not. I've gone to
Mhm.
Thailand with some professors back in 2003.
Mhm.
But it was more like going to Thailand to learn about their educational system because that's my background. But
Okay.
I have not gone to Laos.
Okay. So you, how long are you in the refugee camp before you make the journey to America?
So
And what was that like?
I was in there for 8 years. For the most part, I don't remember because I was very young, but I
Mhm.
vaguely remember just skipping around all day long. Once in a while, there's school for kids, but it was just more like hit or miss,
Mhm.
nothing formal. So you go whenever you want to. Some are very, they wanted to learn. I think for us girls, it was just more like just run around all day, and many of them learn how to sew because that's basically how they make their living in the refugee camp. They would the women will sew and send it to America where their relatives are, and
Mhm.
sell it for money, and then send the money back to help them. But yeah, I was there for 8 years. Not much, no opportunities. My dad didn't really, want to come to America. His hope was to go back to Laos, but that wasn't an option. And so by 1987, all his friends and most of the relatives already immigrated to America, and so he decided, you know, and his family was also growing. By this time, I was born, and then two of my younger brothers were born, and so he decided that he wanted us to have an opportunity in life, and so we came here. My uncle, his younger brother, came here in 1979 already,
Mhm.
and he came to Minnesota and he told us, "Hey, this is the place to be. This is where most of the relatives reside." And so we came to Minnesota.
And did you come straight to Minnesota? Or did you stop over at another state for a while and then end up in Minnesota? And part B of that question is, what was your mode of transportation getting from the refugee camp to Minnesota?
Right. So transitioning from the refugee camp to coming to America, there's like a waiting. It's like a waiting camp where many adults and many older children they would learn basic English, and
Mm-hmm.
we were stuck there for about 5 to 6 months prior to getting on a plane to come to this country. So by this in this waiting area, they would teach the adults and younger children how to speak English, but it was just very basic. I remember because I was a lot younger, and so I wasn't required to go and learn
Mm-hmm.
English. But I would be bored at home. I mean, young kids, we would just be um, s- skipping around the camp while parents and older siblings attend these English classes. And I remember like being bored, and so I would go and stand by a window and just listen to what they're learning. And I remember just repeating after a book, a chair, an apple. I remember just repeating. I'm not sure how that was going to help us uh, understand English, but those are the very, very basic English that I remember learning in the waiting camp. But after 6 or 7 months, we finally got on a plane. They also told us when you come to America, you wear jeans and shirt, to be Americanized. And so
Mm-hmm.
they provided clothes for us, and we thought, wow, this is really cool. We have never worn jeans before, so that was my first time wearing pants, jeans. But we got on a plane, came here. I was so sick on the plane. I have like extreme emotion sickness. I was just constantly vomiting, and I thought I was gonna die. I didn't think I was gonna make it to America.
Wow.
Um, Something happened to our plane. I guess we had to make an emergency stop in Italy, and I remember my mom was just dragging me, to the hotel. And I remember just like staring at this huge building and like, whoa, like, where are we? Like, is this a castle? Like, we have never seen tall buildings or street lights or anything like that before. So it was just very intriguing. And I remember going to the hotel room, and there's a TV, and there's like these soft beds, and we're jumping on it like, wow, this is so cool. It was, yeah, it was just the most amazing and shocking things for us.
So
But
you.
eventually, yeah.
Mhm.
So eventually, a good rest, I it made me felt better. The next morning, there's it must be like a breakfast buffet or something. I remember, a whole bunch of us going down there, and I d- we were not very familiar with the food they served, but I remember seeing those like small, tiny breakfast sausage, and I tried
Mhm.
one, and I thought, oh, wow, this is like best thing ever, And of course, it's the first time in a while that I was able to eat something, and so I'm just like, I don't even know how many I ate, but my mom was like, you're not supposed to eat so much. You just, people are looking at us. And I'm like, I'm so hungry, but this is so good. I've never had anything like this before. So,
Are you
yeah,
still a
it was
fan of
fun.
breakfast sausages?
Actually, I do. Yeah, I am. It
Okay,
always
good.
reminds me of that moment.
Great story so far. So eventually you come here, you and your family settle in, and eventually at 8 years old, you got to start school and you got to, I guess, get yourself acclimated.
Hmm.
to your new learning environment. Tell our audience a little bit about how that went for you and some of the challenges that you may have encountered making the transition into American public school system.
Yeah, yeah. Talking about more shocking things. Um,
Hmm.
my first time, let's just say my first time going to school, never seen a yellow bus before or didn't know that we could get on a yellow bus. I remember, and my parents, they don't really understand, but anything except, my uncle would tell them, this is, where you go, take your daughter there, and then a bus will come and pick her up. Well, my mom failed to tell me like all the, like what to expect, and I don't think that she
Hmm.
even, you know herself. And so I remember walking with her like one block away from that up in the house, and here comes this small yellow bus, and it stopped. The bus driver opened the door, and my mom was like, "Okay, you go in." I'm like, "Okay." And I'm going to school. Like, I know I'm going to school, but this it's so strange. And I stepped, so I went up to the bus and I turned back to my mom, and I asked her, "Well, am I coming back home? Like, I'm not sure. Like, am I going to go to school forever and not come back? Like, I don't know." And she said, "Yeah, you're coming back." I'm like, "Okay, well, that sounds a little bit assuring that I will be back, but I'm not sure." Because I was the first one. There was nobody else on the bus. So I guess I was the first stop. So eventually, we made multiple stops, and there's other like Hmong kids on the bus too. So I felt a little bit more comfortable. But yeah, being the first one on the bus and your mom doesn't know to explain to you was kind of
Hmm.
scary.
So, what seat did you sit in when your first? You get on the bus, it's empty. What seat did you sit in? The first seat, middle seat, back row? Just out of
Oh, the
curiosity.
first seat, very close to the bus driver to make sure that I was safe.
Okay, so so by this time, what are you about 9, 10 years old, or and and how much English do you have? Are you competent at?
Um, I was probably 9 years old. No, I was eight
Okay,
years old. I was 8 years
okay,
old.
you're
I
still
started in
okay.
second grade,
Mm-hmm.
and I have zero English. But I remember going to school, and through an interpreter, they asked me, I guess a teacher asked me, can I speak English? And through an interpreter, he asked me that, and I said, well, I don't know English, but I know apple and banana. Like, I was so confident. Like,
Because you stood at the window.
yes, I
Early.
did. I did. I learned that.
Right, right, right. I like that. Now, but that presents another question for you. When you and your family got here, uh, who served as translators and things like that for you? And even simple thing, as going grocery shopping and things. What type of help did you have along those lines?
Well, we were very fortunate that my uncle came here first. And
Okay,
so
got you.
by that time, he was here for almost 10 years. And so he has some English, and we stayed with him for a couple years. I think we stayed with him for, I want to say 1.5 to 2 years before we went to live in the project in North Minneapolis. My
Hmm.
Because at that time we were very poor, and
Hmm.
my parents, they were still learning English and they needed assistance. But we lived with my uncle, and my uncle worked, and my aunt also
Hmm.
worked. So when they come back, they always take them to a grocery store, or they took care of that, and we learned a lot from them prior to going to live by ourselves.
Okay, you remind me of this whole notion of 6 degrees of separation that all the people on Earth, the greatest separation is 6 people. I say that to say this. My wife used to be manager of the lease and occupancy department at Minneapolis Public Housing, and she may have met you and your family there, in fact.
Oh,
But yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay, so now you're in school.
Hmm.
Uh, you have the challenge, I'm assuming, of learning English. Tell me how that went and how fast before you were reciting Shakespeare in English. How long did it take you to get there?
Well, so when we came there in 1987, they have a very unique program for the newcomers, especially Hmong kids. I
Mm-hmm.
remember, I think it was Putnam Elementary School. We are all put in like one large classroom where uh, all the elementary kids, like from like what kindergarten to sixth grade at that time. So we're housed in one classroom, and we had a Hmong teacher, Mr. Lowe. He taught us how to read and write in Hmong. They did not teach us English. I guess the philosophy behind was that if we learn how to read and write in our language, it'll be much easier to transition and learn how to read and write in English. And so the majority of the time we are in that classroom learning to read and write in Hmong. We spend
Mm-hmm.
at least an hour a day. I think it's basically during math time to go into like a mainstream classroom and learn how to do math and try to slowly assimilate with the mainstream students.
Okay.
So my
And
mhm.
so, go ahead. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so the first 2 years was like that, but the majority of the time was trying to survive in school. And because I did not have any language, English at that time, I don't really remember, what happened in the mainstream classroom. I mean, it's just
Mm-hmm.
all a blur. But
Mm-hmm.
um, in the classroom where we learned uh, how to read and write Hmong, and with the Hmong teacher, was I
Right.
remember clearly what we did and what we studied and such.
So I'm assuming there came a time when you were like, "Hey, I got this. I can speak English, and I'm ready to go out. These are my words and conquer the world." Do you remember any particular moment that you thought to yourself, "Hey, I got this. This is gonna work," etc. And I got my English down, and you start building confidence. Do you remember any time frame like that?
Yes, I do. So I don't remember much in second grade and third grade, but fourth grade is when I start remembering uh, uh, going to school, hang out with other kids. Uh, Now, by this time, we were transferring to another elementary school, Olson Elementary
Mm-hmm.
School in Minneapolis. And
Mm-hmm.
we were no longer with other Hmong kids. We were now assimilating into a regular classroom, with an exception that maybe we spent an hour or so in an ESL class. That's a, a room for English as a second language learners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so during reading time, we would go into our ESL classroom with our ESL teacher, and we would learn how to read English and how to speak the language. So that's when I start remembering, you know, the experience in school. Not fully speak I cannot fully speak the language at that time. Of course, it's just
Mm-hmm.
broken English, but eventually I think I felt a lot more comfortable and more confident with my English when I was in sixth grade in the
Mm-hmm.
middle school. Mm.
Well, I, as one who took 5 years of French and can't speak a word of it today, I probably know enough to make my get around Paris, but I'm just amazed when people have a second language and they're good at it. It's kind of like being amazed at people who can play music by ear. So now, just another quick thing. We're going to move on here, and we're going to get around to your educational career, and then your community service, and you're running for office. But was there ever any time in those early years? Well, let me come at it from another one. What gave you the courage and the off to carry on and not get discouraged? And you know, were there any time where you really were saying this is too tough, this is too much, or you broke down and cried or anything? You went home to mom and said, "I can't deal with this." Did you have any experiences like that during your early years?
I don't remember. I always
Mhm.
enjoyed going to school,
That's
and
good.
My parents, they were huge in education, even though they were illiterate in English.
Hmm.
Um, it was something that they advocate for, and they
Hmm.
always tell us, you need to stay in school. You need to learn to read and write because your future depends on it. You need to go to college when you get older. That's how you're going to get a job. And so,
Hmm.
I grew up in a big family, and I remembered coming back home every day. My mom would have like dinner ready for us, and so as soon as um, you know, everyone got back from school, we would have dinner together. We would help clean, wash the dishes, clean everything, and then homework starts. And I remember my dad did not want us to watch TV Monday through Thursday, no TV whatsoever. We have
Oh,
to
wow.
read, we have to write, we have to do our homework. Even if we don't have homework, we have to be reading or be writing a story or just do something educational. And that was that was the rule at home every single night. We have to, work on our study.
Hmm.
So,
So you mentioned, I'm sorry, you mentioned sausages earlier. Can you think of another food that you experienced for the first time and you just went, wow? Or another food? Well, I know there's a lot of foods you took you get used to, but was there another food item that really, really caught your attention as far as in a positive way? And I just can't get enough of this.
yes, at school, most of the times, because I did not like the smell, or it was kind of hard to, um, well, let's just put it, the taste is just not um, there for me.
Hmm.
But I did like hamburger for the first time I tried. I'm like, ooh, this is really good. It's like, I wish the bun was rice with the meat in the middle, but it was different, and I really liked it. I did like hot dogs too. So, because it was very similar to uh, the sausage that I had. So those are my two favorite food in school, I would say, hamburger and hot dog. Mhm.
Okay, and you mentioned your father's TV watching rules. Once you were able to watch TV, what was one of your favorite program or your favorite program to watch?
So when we watch TV, because there's a lot of us at home,
Hmm.
and usually we would watch TV with my parents. It was Animal Channel.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Growing up, well, on the weekends, if we get up early, because my dad
Hmm.
always, uh, we have to always wake up early in the morning, regardless if it's the weekends or weekdays. There's no sleeping in, no such thing as
Hmm.
that in the family. And so we
Hmm.
will wake up really early in the morning and watch cartoon. Dennis the Menace, those are the Jetson. Those are the type of shows that we watch in the morning. But early, after that, if we're watching with my mom and dad, it's usually like the animal, the Planet show, or yeah.
Okay. So eventually you graduate from high school, you make it through. What was your favorite subject, by the way, in high school?
It's funny. I really liked English and math, and I thought at one point I was going to be a math teacher. Then after algebra, it got really hard. I'm like, okay, no, math isn't for me.
Mhm.
but I but I really like English. I like reading. I
Okay.
grew up reading because my dad just made us read or do some things, and so you just kind of have to pick up a book and read, even if you don't want to. So eventually, it's like you can't pretend staring at the book anymore. So you have to read.
Okay.
So yeah, in high school, English was my favorite subject.
And I know you went on to become an educational professional
Mhm.
in the public school system here in the Twin Cities. Why don't you tell us how um, your journey from high school, assuming through college, into becoming a professional in the educational system?
Sure. So I was a very young mom. I had my first child when I was 15 years old. So I was a teenage mom. Um,
Hmm.
and so it was very difficult. Yet I still managed to graduate from high school. Right after high school, I needed a job to support my kids. By that time, I had two children,
Hmm.
my two oldest, and I at first I didn't think I was able to go to college. I didn't think I was smart enough. I know I was a B student. Um, I went from A student to a B student because I had responsibility.
Hmm.
However, I didn't think that I was smart enough to go to college. I didn't think my grade was in par to go into college. And being a mom, I didn't think that was even possible. So right after high school, I went and became a teacher assistant at a school that was a few blocks away from where I lived. And there I worked in an office, just sorting out mail, you know, doing phone calls. And one day, while I was sorting out mail, there was like an ad uh,
Hmm.
at Concordia University. They're trying to promote, um, I guess, diversity teachers, and they have this program called the SEAT program that stand for a Southeast Asian teacher licensure. And they said
Hmm.
that, hey, if you join our program, they will pay 50% of the tuition. The program will pay 50% of
Hmm.
the tuition. And
Hmm.
I I looked at that letter or that ad, and I took advantage of it. I thought, well, I really I enjoyed working in school in the classrooms. Once in a while, I get to go into the classroom and read to the kids, and I really enjoyed that. And I thought, why not take a chance, going to college? It could be an opportunity to be able to get to college, and that's what I did. And so while I was working full time in school, I was also going to school full time in the evening too. It took me 4 years because I did, even though I went to school in the evening, I took like full credits, like 12 to 15 credits. I think that's equal a full time student. And I also did, during the summertime too. And so it took me 4 years to get my license. I became an ESL teacher. While attending this program, I thought about what kind of teacher do I want to be? And I thought back to uh, my years of going to school and who influenced me the most. And I thought about my ESL teachers. He was my fourth grade ESL teacher, Mr. McDonald. He was
Hmm.
very kind and very patient, and he helped me learn English very well. And so I thought, I want to make a difference just like he did in my life. And so I became an ESL teacher.
Okay, so a couple of things. Let's start with the ESL teacher. Uh, what was the biggest challenge or the strangest thing about English when you started, if any, when you started taking English? What was the most difficult thing or the strangest thing when it compares to your language?
Oh my gosh, there's too many rules in English, and as soon as you learn a rule, it changes. And I'm still learning
Yeah,
English,
I
even
guess
though I
you're right
taught
about that.
I taught English to immigrant students, but I'm still learning English myself. It's like I said, English is a life learning language. I
Okay,
just put it that way.
okay. So now you are teacher ESL, and somewhere down the line, may I understand that you decided that you were going to get involved in politics? Well, no. Before we go there,
Hmm.
uh, you're a mom. You're working full time. You're going to college, I think, full time, right?
Hmm.
How are you juggling all of this? What was the key to being able to juggle all these things that's going on in your life and still succeed?
Determination is the
Hmm.
key. When I think about my children, when I think about the life that I want to give them,
Hmm.
and the success that I want for myself.
Hmm.
I felt that, thinking back to being in the refugee camp, there wasn't any opportunity for us. And my
Mm-hmm.
dad had always tell us, I brought you here to make this place better, not to dirty this place, this country. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that I took that to heart. And I want to make a difference. I wanted to make my life better here because he brought me here to uh, so that way I can change my future. And because there is endless opportunities here. And so
Mm-hmm.
being such a young mom, now by this time, uh, after college, I had two more children. And so now I have four children.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a single mom, having um, just a BA and being a teacher, the salary wasn't enough. And so I decided to go pursue my master's in education. I
Mm-hmm.
looked at this is what motivated me. The first thing was the salary. I'm like, wow, at a BA, I'm making this much, but if I get my master's, which is only 2 years, I could make 10,000 more. And that motivated me because
Mm-hmm.
I needed to, make sure that I can pay my bills, put the food on the table for my four children.
Right.
And while I did that, it was really, really, it was so much harder getting my master's than my bachelor's
Mm-hmm.
because it requires a lot more writing and a lot more work. And
Yeah.
now I have four children. And so I remember just and going to, teaching all day, coming back to my kids and, helping them all night. And then on Tuesdays, every night I had to attend class. And that, every Tuesday my dad would go and pick my kids up at the daycare. My aunt
Mm-hmm.
watches them. And my two older ones, they would um, come home. At this time, they're old enough to stay home for a couple hours. I would rush back to the house to make sure they have food on the table. And so as soon as they eat, they need to do their homework, rush back to school, and yeah, stay there until like 7:38. Then I go to my dad's house. They live in St. Paul. At this time, I live in Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
My dad lives in east side of St. Paul. I
Mm-hmm.
would drive over there to pick up my kids and then bring them home. I did that for 2 years. Now, if you ask me how I did it, I don't know how I did it. I don't even know how, yeah, I even juggle that. Being a full time mom, full time teacher, um, a full time student, it seems, even though it's only 1 day a week, it feels like a full time student. But I did it. I did it because um, for my children, I'm determined to kind of prove myself to make sure that I'm knowing that I can do it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and for the money too.
Well, a couple of things. You mentioned feeding your children. Just a quick question for you. Did you continue to cook Hmong cuisine, or did you incorporate American cuisine? And if you incorporated American cuisine, did you have any favorite type of meals that you prepared or still preparing? How much American cuisine versus Hmong cuisine do you cook now, or back in the day when you were really raising your family?
I did a mixture. I mean, mostly Hmong food, just
Okay.
like stir fry, classic Hmong food. But I do like spaghetti, hamburger, hot dogs. I mean, those typical American food.
Okay. And so now you're in America. You're thinking about making the country better and contributing to the country. Before we talk about your foray into politics, uh, today when you hear people complaining about America and what it has to offer, especially people born here, as an immigrant, what goes through your mind when you hear people complaining about the past, the present, and how unfair things are, or the economic system, or whatever complaint you hear, what's your reaction to that when you hear that?
I don't think that they have any other experience living in a different country that actually oppress people or uh, real discrimination. Not to say that there's no discrimination in this country.
Right.
There is, but there is discrimination every country that you come from.
Yep.
Even in Laos and Thailand, like Hmong people, if they want to get a government job or if they even want to go to school, they have to change their name into like a Laos name or a Thai name. They cannot even carry their
Mm,
Hmong name. And
right.
so to me, you lose your identity in countries like that. You lose your identity. You have to change your identity, your name, just so that way you can be part of the mainstream. And in this country, you don't even have to do that. You don't
Right.
even have to do that. This country has come a long way, and of course, it is not a perfect country, but what country is?
Right.
But right now, there's just so many opportunity. You think about it. There's other safer and better countries in the world. But why do immigrants and why do people fight to come to America? It's because we have the opportunity to run a business, to get an education, and to be whatever you want in this country. Nothing stops you. As long as you're
Yeah.
willing to work hard, put in the
Mm-hmm.
effort, put in the work, you can
Mm-hmm.
become anything you want. But you don't get those type of opportunities in any other country.
Right. And that's my message to all the people, especially young people I talk to. You can be anything you want to be. Don't listen to all the naysayers and the negative people and the people who constantly telling you how fair life is and how discriminatory is and all the things happened back in the past. And I try to tell them, if you got someone in your life that's doing that, you need to get them out of your life.
Right.
And if you got news or a medium or someone on the outside saying that, don't listen to them. And I always challenge them, tell me what you want to be, and let's figure out how to go and do it. Understanding there's going to be obstacles in life. Now,
Right.
we got while here, I want to get into the politics because I know you have a time constraint and I do too. So, uh, you decided to run for political office. Uh, and I think this is your second time of running for office. Why don't you let our audience know how did you decide to make, why did you decide to make that leap, and how that's been going in your role as political candidate?
Sure. Political being political was not on my mind a few years ago, but I realized when I was still a teacher, and I realized that the public education has changed so much, um, and just seeing the representative in our district is not representing us. I work with many underprivileged students. I work with many parents that are in poverty, that we have a lot of issues in our district, and it's not being answered, or we're not getting the help that we need. And especially in a time where there's just so much crime out there, the victims are being silenced. Inflation has caused families to, um, I mean, they're hurting. They're
Mm-hmm.
basically hurting at the grocery store. Uh, Safety is a concern. And I, I noticed that this country is heading the wrong direction with the failed leadership that we have. Right now, the open border is a major, major problem in our country. And our failed leadership isn't doing anything about it. And they're also spewing nonsense to these young minds. This is not what we need in America. We need to have our children to go to school where they're actually learning how to read and write and do math, basic academics. We need
Mm-hmm.
families and and children to be able to go out in the street and feel safe. Our needs are not being met at this time. And that is why I decided I'm going to run. I did that 2 years ago. Things hasn't changed. Of course, we came up short, but we're going to keep fighting. We're going to fight, and we're going to make sure that we put a leader who actually cares about the communities, who actually care about the people, not the elitists.
So, what is well? Let's take a couple of issues here. Let's take the border issue. What do you think is the best solutions for uh, getting our border back under control? What would you suggest?
Well, we need to secure our border. That's
Right,
what we
right.
need to do,
Well, yeah.
because
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
people, if they want an open border, they are condoning criminals, drugs, and they're condoning exploitation of women and children, and we can't afford that.
Yeah. Well, what I don't understand, and I think I have a pretty basic understanding of the Constitution. I'll go this route. I don't know why any president who has an open border policy does not get impeached. I think there is language in the Constitution about protecting American sovereignty,
Right.
and I believe it or not, I don't care who the president is. I don't care what party. If you allow what's going on down there, and I think since the current administration has been there, we're looking at 11. Well, if they say 11 or 12 million, I'm going to add another 25, 30% to that. So we've probably got about 15 million people who have come into this country since this current administration. Uh, if some of our audience are not aware, the Trump administration had uh, worked out an agreement with Mexico that the refugees, if they're fleeing persecution, that they stay there and get processed there. That seemed to be working well. And you probably know that there is actually a cell phone app that the Department of Homeland Security, oh God, give these refugees, couple that want to come in. Basically, they allow the illegal immigrants to schedule coming into the country, and then they almost automatically parole them. I think people don't understand really what's going on as far as the immigration is concerned. And the other thing I tell everybody, I'm sick like this, but I read studies, I read artists, and I do things like watch congressional hearings. And I think earlier this week or last week, I learned that our current Secretary of Homeland Security used to serve on a board that helped illegal immigrants. And so, is anybody surprised that this is going on? And people should also know that the way our Constitution is written, and that because a lot of people wonder why this is happening, and I tell everybody, follow the power and the money. And what people don't know that according to the Constitution, the illegal immigrants are being counted in the census, and they determine the apportionments in Congress. And so there is a political incentive for a certain party to bring these illegal immigrants in. What do you know about that, and how do we fix that? Well, I guess the way we fix it is just stop them from coming in here. But what do you think we should be doing? What do you want the voters to know about how to look at that, and why should they vote for you if they want that issue resolved?
Well, yes, we, I mean, we are a nation, and we need to make sure that we secure our borders so that way we can protect our people. It's simple as that. And
Mhm.
look, we are a nation of immigrants, and yes, I am an immigrant myself. However, I am a legal immigrant, and there are many um, immigrants or refugee people that want to come to this country, and they're waiting their turn to come to this country, and they And yet we have all these illegals coming here, and most of them are criminals. And now let's really also think back to what is happening at the borders. The last 2 years, we have over 85,000, or now even more, children missing, and they have no idea. These leaders do not have a clue where these children are. Now,
Mhm.
if a child is missing in this country, what do? We settle an Amber Alert,
Yep,
correct?
yep, yep, yep.
But 85,000 children missing from the borders, and they have no clue. Young girls are being raped and kidnapped down there, and they're not doing anything about it. Women and children are being exploited down there, and they're not doing anything. These are the major issues that we have down our borders, and we must secure it. We must stop these type of crimes down in our border. And I don't know if Joe Biden and our Kamala Harris, I don't know if they're working with the cartels or not, because basically they have no control over our borders, but the cartels do. We need to simply secure our borders. 2 years ago, I had the privilege to go down to the southern Texas, the border, and sorry, to the borders by in Texas, and I
Hmm.
met with many um, families that live along the borders, and they're Mexican descent, and they're legal immigrants, and they said it's so dangerous for them. One particular father who has three daughters, and he said, every night he's afraid for his girls. They're constantly, breaking his fence, hiding under his cars, and then break into his cars, break into anything outside. And these cost him money. Like, who is going to give him money to fix his cars when it's broken into, or his fence and his doors and his yard?
Hmm.
So
So I know
we,
you got a little time here. We're going to touch on a few issues. I'm going to ask you about them. Uh, we'll give you an opportunity to wrap things up as far as why you're running, and we're going to allow people to know how they can support your candidacy. So, looking at a few issues, when you look at the world stage, we see the war in Ukraine. We see the Middle East once again, I guess, heating up, to put it
Mhm.
lightly. We see China uh, rattling its sabers about Taiwan. So we see all these things going on in the world. What would you, what would be some of your main emphasis in the foreign policy area once you make it to Congress?
Look, these things are happening because we have failed leadership in DC. Joe Biden does not have the ability to wage peace with the world. And he can't even help Ukraine wage peace with Russia. His oil policy has led to the Israel and the Hamas and Iran. And so if you look at all these issues, it comes down to Joe Biden, his administration, and the failed leadership in DC. And we need to change that. We need to change that. We need a strong leadership who can stand up and say, world, we need to work together. We need to find a way to solve these issues. He's not doing that. And it's his policies that's causing all the chaos around the world.
Uh,
So we need to
so,
change that. Leadership is important.
okay, excellent. People generally vote their pocketbooks, and I should say, the riots after George Floyd, I had a chance to tour University Avenue with people from Hmong leaders from the Hmong community. Uh, I just remember the one story that the store owner actually had a safe in his store where he kept his life savings. and he had lost all that, and the insurance company, of course, wouldn't want to pay for that. And I just heard a lot of stories. Uh, First, has the Hmong business community along university, has that been restored to its original strength? Is it coming on? What's the status there after they went through all they went through right after the George Floyd incident?
Well, the George Floyd incident and also the light rail has hurt a lot of
Oh yeah, right,
businesses
right.
there. And it's
Uh-huh.
not just the Hmong business, but all the businesses on University Avenue. Of course, my opponent uh, voted for that light rail that came through, and it devastated so many business there. In fact, I spoke to one business owner there. She owned two buildings and lost it all because of the light rail. And then on top of that, when that incident came about, um, they had to shut down many times because of rioting and violence around the area. And so, I mean, it's slowly recovering, but it's not back to where it used to be.
I
And
never
it's
thought
something
about.
that
Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's something that my opponent isn't looking to. She doesn't really care about all these small businesses around um, East Side St. Paul, University Avenue, and in the fourth district, and not just St. Paul, but in the important pocket, these poor, smaller pockets around
Mhm.
District 4, where they need help, where small businesses are struggling. She doesn't care about them. She doesn't care about the people in the fourth district. She rather care about, let me see, was it a month ago? She care about fish, but she doesn't care about people's lives. I, I mean, American lives are in jeopardy here and overseas, and we need to address those things. We need to address the educational system for our children. We need to address parental rights. They're slowly losing their parental rights here. And we need to get America back on track.
So, by the way, I should know this. What's the name of the current office holder that you're running against? And by the way, also as part of your answer, describe CD4 for our audience, and who's the current representative.
Okay. So the current representative is Representative Betty McCollum.
Oh
She's
yeah.
been, yeah, she's been serving for about 20 plus years. And CD4 is a very diverse communities. You have a lot of Asian, African Americans, Blacks, Hispanics, white. I mean, all walks of life, very
Mm-hmm.
diverse. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel that she doesn't understand her district. It's nice, during um, election year, you take a photo, you do photo ops with people of color and say, "Oh, look, I'm with Hmong people, I'm with Black people, I'm with Hispanic people." But have you really gone into the communities and really talk to them and understand their issues? I don't think so. I think she
Mm-hmm.
is just not the right person to represent this district because she's insensitive. In fact, you know what? In 2016, she voted to for 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 trade with Laos, and the Hmong veterans told her that she shouldn't. Well, they actually protested, and they said if she wants to give them free trade, if she wants to give Laos free trade, then she needs to have them sign an agreement where they stop killing Hmong people in Laos and stop oppressing the Hmong people in Laos, because they are still doing that in Laos. Hmong people are still being persecuted. They're still being oppressed by the Laos government because it's a communist country. And
Right.
she refused to listen to her constituents. She'd rather give free trade to a communist country versus listening to her constituents.
Right.
And this is the type of person who is representing this district, and we don't want that type of leadership in our district.
Well, May, your passion for what you're doing and for the people of the community is coming through. You're getting rolling here. Let's do this with
Yes.
the little time that we have here. Tell the people of CD4 why should they elect Mei Zhang to Congress in November, and how she would make their lives better. And then let our audience know how to reach out to you to support you if they want to get involved.
Sure. Well, thanks for the opportunity. Look, I'm just an average citizen who wants to make a difference in this country. I have lived the American dream. I have the opportunity to go to school, to raise my family, to own my own home. I have the privilege to educate students, underprivileged students, to work with families, and hopefully made a difference in their lives. We have a broken educational system that's not serving our students the way it should, or and then we also have inflation that's hurting families. They're hurting at the grocery stores. They're hurting at gas stations. Young families can't afford to buy homes. And like I said before, our parents are losing their parental rights. America, we're losing our freedom and our rights. And so we need to get that back. And we need to find a leader that care enough about the people and what's happening in this country. We need to protect our people. We need to bring back justice to the people that we served. And we need to hold these leaders who are not doing that accountable. I know that I can be that leader and that representative for District 4. Because I know I worked with many diverse communities, not just my community, but everyone. And I understands the struggle, just like an average, citizen in District 4. If you would like to find out more information about my campaign, please go to may4mn.com. That's MAY, the number 4mn.com. I love to have you volunteer or donate to my campaign. It is going to be a hard fight, but I'm not going to give up. I will fight because this is the fight for the people and a fight for the country.
Give them your website one more time.
It's may4mn.com. That's MAY, the number 4mn.com.
Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Mei Young Jung, running for Congress in CD4. You see her passion, you see her commitment, you heard her story. Uh, Please go out and check her out on our website. Look for events, look for ways that you may could support her.